Namaskar. Dignitaries in the dais, Vishwanath Karatji and others on the dais present today, other dignitaries in the audience, most importantly, my dear students, whom I consider as future of this country. I was given an impression that I was supposed to speak about the judiciary in India. I will speak about it, I have nothing to hide. But I will also speak about the other two constitutional institutions, the legislature and the executive also. I worked in many positions, but until I came to the institution of Karnataka Lokayukta, I was feeling that I was a frog in the well till I came to that institution. That institution exposed me to what's really happening in our society. I saw the sufferings of the people, that too from the hands of an institution mostly called the government. I'm not a politician, never been one, and too late to be one. I'm 80 years old now, so I'm not going to speak for my future as a politician. I also know the fact that democracy cannot be there without politics. Politics is an absolute necessity in democracy. As Sudhanji said, I also endorse his statement. I want you all to join politics when you come out, but with a difference. Become politicians with an object to serve and not to serve yourself. My dear students, in 1946, in anticipation of independence to this country, our elders created a body called the Constituent Assembly. The object of the assembly was to create or draft a constitution for this country, which a wonderful job they did. And that institution functioned from 1946 to 1949, November. And the document they drafted was accepted by we, the people of India, on 26th of January 1950. I just want to place two incidents that took place there in the 4.5 years tenure. How committed the members of the assembly were to their job. There were differences of opinion, but they settled it by dialogue and by voting, never created any ruckus. There was no walkouts. I want you all to consider what happened there to what's happening in the first pillar of the Constitution called the legislature. I again repeat and say, I don't say this with any political motivation, it involves all political parties. One of the issues that came up for discussion before that institution was what type of a political system that this country should adopt after it became independent. Internationally, there were many political systems. There was monarchy, there was dictatorship, there was ism-based politics like communism, socialism, capitalism. Amongst them was a system called democracy. The meaning of the word democracy was government of the people, by the people, for the people. Our elders spoke and said, we Indians were never ever independent. We were under the rules of Rajas, Zamindars, foreigners. They made the law they liked, and per force we had to follow it, otherwise we were punished. So they pleaded, now that we're going to become independent, let's choose a political system by which every Indian feels this administration is mine. It's by me, it's for me. And the definition of democracy suited their demand. Our elders accepted democracy as the political system of this country. A little later, another issue came for consideration. The issue was, after accepting democracy as the political system, if a person wanted to contest election from a constituency, should he have any educational qualification? Many elders spoke and said, the person who wants to contest from my constituency must have the capacity to understand the problems of the constituency. He must have the capacity to find a solution to the problem. For that, they said, it required some educational qualification. The editor of the Constituent Assembly Debates writes, majority of the people, if not all, were willing to accept that there should be educational qualification for a person to contest election. A little later, one gentleman stood up and addressed the chair. He said, "Sir, recently we adopted democracy as the political system of this country, and you said the meaning of it is government of the people, by the people, for the people. Today," he said, that is somewhere in 1946, "the population of this country is 40 crores, and 80% of the 40 crores people are total illiterates." He asked a question, "Sir, are you reserving this democracy for the 20% of the literates?" He asked a question. I believe the assembly became stunned. There was nobody to oppose that statement, though eminent people had said earlier there should be educational qualification. After a little time, one of the seniors who spoke and said there should be educational qualification stood up and apologized to the House. He said, "I made a mistake. I did not look at it from the point of view with which the honorable member is saying it." He is right. Democracy cannot be reserved for any class of people. It should be the right, it's the right of every citizen. And that resolution was dropped. And till today, there is no educational qualification for anybody to contest an election under the state laws, which includes union law also. I'm pointing out to this so that you can now compare what exactly is happening in the successor institutions, be it the parliament at the center or the state legislatures. Is it the same dignity with which the House is functioning? And how many of them are really participating in the proceedings? There's a magazine called Election Watch, which audited the performance of the members of the Lok Sabha from 2004 to 2009, and out of 543 plus members, that report says, in 5 years, those who participated by actually contributing to the discussion were only 174. Fabulously paid. 12 months salary is paid for maximum 100 days in parliament. They are free to practice their law or medicine or business or whatever it is. They get pension. And this is the only job in India which has two salaries. You get the monthly salary, and going and sitting in the parliament, you get a sitting fees. I'm not questioning that. Let them get it. But question is, what are you doing? My dear students, you have been watching the proceedings in the newspaper, in televisions, and what is happening, what languages are being used. Where is that responsibility of being a representative of the people? Other discussions indicate that they are being made in the larger interest of the nation or for political purposes. How much time is spent on attacking each other? India Today, in its website, for the last year, May 2019, says nearly 40% of the members of the parliament have criminal records. Because there is no law which prevents, unless you are convicted by a court of law. I'll speak about that conviction part a little later. You are not disqualified. You can be there. There are people who have multiple criminal cases in my state who are ministers. I have no problem with that. I have only one problem. When you have a case pending from a particular department, he is made the minister of that department. What does it indicate to the people of this country? I once quoted in the media saying, there's an English saying, set a thief to catch a thief. That's the best policy, I think. That seems to be the system. But that doesn't mean the quality of their functioning is confined only to the first pillar of the Constitution. Take the second pillar of the Constitution, the executive. When the executive were being created, the elders said, they are the future administrators. Let's have best of them. Let's have highest educational qualification. Let there be no influence from anybody. Let there be independent bodies. So they created the Public Service Commissions. What's happened to this word commission? It's got dual meaning. Few months back, 1 year back, Karnataka COD has filed charge sheet against one of the past Public Service Commission members for how much money he has taken for giving a job in the state services. It's only an example. It's there all over. I have no doubt about that. It is prevailing what's happening in the thing. But I'm giving you one example. And what's happening in the executive? If there is a scam in this country, there is a hand of an executive more, one or two or three more, without which there can be no scam, because under the rules of business, the person who ultimately signs the contract is the secretary of that department. This is the second pillar of the Constitution. Let's come to the third pillar of the Constitution, which I served for over 50 years. What's happening? One case which has to be decided in the first court takes 15 to 20 years. Then there is another appeal, the first appeal, the second appeal, the High Court, the Supreme Court. By the time the final judgment comes, will the client be alive? It is jocularly said, husband and wife have a fight, husband is 25 years old, wife is 20 years old. One of them goes to the court for restitution of conjugal rights or divorce. By the time the final judgment comes from the Supreme Court, husband will be 85 years old and wife will be 80 years old. Natural justice system. And the relief for this? Umpteen ways and means are there to dispose of cases. If somebody quotes and says, justice delayed is justice denied, the answer given is justice hurried is justice buried. There are countries in this universe which have only two courts. The first court and the second court. If you lose a case in the first court, you gamble and go to the next court, and you lose there, you are fined heavily, and that ends the matter. There is no second, third, or federal court or the Supreme Court in the thing. Why can't we have that? Of course, there are going to be opposition, but let's face it. A litigation cannot go on like this. And nobody can say that there is no corruption in judiciary. Let's face it. But again, my dear students, don't forget, it's not only these three pillars of the Constitution which has lost its values. Take the media. Media is not a creation of the Constitution. People, because of its love and work it did, lifted it to the level of the three pillars of the Constitution and called it the fourth estate. What's happened in that media? You all must have heard about the paid news concept. You collect money and publish false news. Again, that doesn't stop there. It is in every profession, this greed, which is causing such damage to the nation. Sudhanji said this country has developed. I fully agree it has developed very much. But if there were values in this society, the development would have been much, much more. We should not be satisfied with the development that we are seeing today. We have to find out the cause, why there has been no development, and set right the cause, which according to me, ladies and gentlemen and my dear students, is the loss of social values in this country. I grew up in a society which used to boycott people who were sent to jail. What's happened to that society? Today people go to jail and take a bail and come out. There are thousands of people to garland such people, and we accept them as our leaders. Is this what our society and morality of this nation taught us? Only defense is, I am not yet held guilty. Or out of 19 cases, I have been acquitted in 2 cases. Acquittal is something which is normal in this country because conviction rate is hardly 20-21%. My dear students, you have to change this society, not for me. My days are numbered, for yourself, for your future. But if you want to change it, you've got to inculcate just 2 values. Our elders had created dozens of values for peace and solidarity in this society, all of which, according to me, has disappeared. Now, if we can inculcate just 2 values, one is contentment, what we call in vernacular as tripti, and the other is humanism. You have no contentment, you get a disease called greed, which has no limitation, which has no cure. However much you make, you're not satisfied, you want more, more, more. Just see the growth of greed in our country. In the decade of 50s, there was one scam called Jeep scam. Country lost 51,000 rupees in 50s in purchasing Jeep vehicles from Great Britain to Indian soldiers. Thereafter, every year, 1 or 2 scams came. Mundra scam of LIC, Dalmia scam of Bharat Bank, Nagarwala scam of Central Bank. And every time those scams came into the public domain, the number of zeros in the figures started developing. I'm deliberately using the word developing. Come to the decade of 80s, there was a scam called Bofus. Country lost 64 crores of rupees. Come to 2007, let's jump, there's a shortage of time. 2 scams came out, the Commonwealth Games, country lost 70,000 crores. 2G scam, same year, country lost 1,76,000 crores. Who are involved in this? You people? No. The people who are in the administration of this country, it could be political administration or the executive administration. 2012 Colgate, country lost 1,86,000 crores. These are not my figures. These are the figures given by the CAG, the constitutional authority to the government of India after an investigation. So there's no point in saying these are all inflated figures and all. Now, so much money is siphoned off from the state and the central treasuries. What is the development you are thinking of? The answer to this question is given by a former Prime Minister of this country, late Rajiv Gandhi, in 1985. Then he said, when the government spent at that point of time 1 rupee for development, the ultimate project received only 15 paise, in 85, out of 1 rupee. This is not my statement, this is the statement of a former Prime Minister of this country. Today, how much do you think it really got? Out of 10 rupees, will 15 paise go? Calculate how much money really goes for development. Take the state of Karnataka for 2017-18. What was reserved for 1 year's expenditure for development was 1,80,000 crores. Now, as per late Prime Minister's statement, out of that, if only 15%, which I think is much less now, reaches the development, what is the development we are talking about? Imagine if 85%, 90% goes into the project. What would be the development? What would you see? Who is responsible? Are the citizens of India? No. This is what happens when you have no contentment in life and you get a disease called greed. The second value is humanism. We all think we are born human beings. There is no species called human beings. We are born to a species called Homo sapiens, which has got nothing to do with humanism. Humanism is a value which our elders created for peace and solidarity in the society. And I think, I've seen it from close quarters, that is lost today. It's my thinking that even though there is this thing, you are not born as a human being in the journey of your life. If you acquire humanism, exhibit it to the society, and die as a human being, there is no better glory. My dear students, inculcate these two values. Change this society. Build a society which will think of India, and India only, not about yourself. And that India will provide and look after you. Thank you very much for listening.